The Aussie NFL Fantasy Show would like to acknowledge the traditional land owners and the leaders past, present and emerging of Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Darawal countries where we are working from today. This always was, and always will be, Aboriginal land.
This is the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show.
Oh god, this episode has to be one of the worst ones.
That's just me slapping in sunscreen, mate.
I just feel like I'm there. I'm not there for a rectal exam. It's there for just, just a quick check.
Mate, we can always schedule you for that. It's just going to cost them.
Aussie.
Here's an update. I think there's two seagulls having sex next to my car. This is the weirdest shit I've ever seen.
So film it and create a new platform called Only Goals.
NFL.
Yeah, I'm not even believing that. I'm sorry, but I'm not even believing that.
Fantasy.
This is the weirdest fucking... I'm sorry, I'm rattled.
Oh my gosh. Just went from bad to worse. Oh god.
This is the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show.
How much of this will Maddie cut out, by the way?
I don't know, probably.
This is
Sorry, just got AIDS then.
Well, welcome into the show. It was emergency response time last week. And while I'm back in one piece, firstly, I want to give a big thanks to our host in disguise over here, Manjot Melly, who just, the consummate professional, picked up the mantle, ran with it, seamlessly took over a job that I generally make look very difficult. They just made it look so easy. So, hey, thank you, Manjot. I really appreciate you doing that in my absence, mate.
that's all good, Maddie. I mean, look, I enjoyed being the show host. It was fun.
I could tell. I could tell.
I was having the time of my life out there. It was crazy. I was actually just put into the spotlight a bit more. I ate that shit for breakfast, all that
You did.
pressure. So yeah, it was easy.
You
Dominant.
eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
Oh no.
Is that my favorite movie of all time? Yes, it is. Oh my gosh. And I like that you guys talked about it last week too. Is there really going to be a remake?
Was there? Did we talk about that?
I like how Taylor has no idea what we've talked about the minute the mics are off. He's like, wow, that was a blind blur. There was talk about like the Shooter McGavin character. No one knows who he is. Everyone just knows the guy who plays Shooter McGavin as Shooter McGavin. And yeah.
Completely forgot, mate. I was too rattled by seagulls having sex next to me.
That's
in
all
the,
I
car
remember
park,
from that
so,
show.
I can't remember anything else.
You'll be very pleased with the intro to tonight's show, which will have the Only Goals drop in it. I've got to introduce Taylor in, of course. Seagull Voyeur over here. Welcome back, mate.
I feel like I somehow start talking before you even introduce me about something. But yeah, thanks, mate. It was an interesting podcast last week, to say the least. Yeah. I was sitting in a Coles Coffs Harbour car park, and like I said, apparently the gulls just decided to have sex around me. Apparently it's the brothel around my car. And then obviously I had driven past the big banana, and that obviously created some jokes. So it was a great day.
Moonlight just struck everyone a bit right. There was romance in the air, mate. I tell you, having had
and big bananas,
I'd kept the meeting running, and just that's why I was appearing in the corner for everyone who caught the YouTube or seen any drops from it. But that's why I was running in the corners. I still needed to host it. But mate, I was in no state to be in front of an open microphone, and I was drugged up to my eyeballs and had a displaced collarbone and all sorts of shit going on. But to know what was going on in the background, I wasn't able to hear it. But to get to edit it later and have not had any part in it was the wildest fun. Oh
we
my
were
gosh.
pissing ourselves, going, "What is Maddie in for?" Because there was a lot of crap that came on the podcast. There was a lot of other stuff that didn't actually make the podcast.
There was a lot,
but I was just like, he's going to have an absolute field day going through this.
And I mean, I kept 2 full hours of stuff. It's not like I cut, I didn't cut it down just to keep it bare minimum. No, I left a lot in. But gosh, it was a wild ride. But we've established right on now that I probably need to retire from hosting, hand that job to Manjot, and then I need to ask really nicely if I'm allowed on his show. So I think that's where we're up.
And then you can ask Mark for his starts of the week, and he'll be sweet.
Yeah, I mean, did you ask us?
I'm starting to wonder if I should do that, because instantly he comes in, no preparation, hits it out of the park.
Gets 2 points.
Got me 2 points. I've worked very hard to get the 2 points the times I've got him this year. He just walks in off the street, does it. Not a thing. So I might have to invoke some Marky Mark to help me with that in the future. Or he could just be a regular on the show, and maybe I'll just be a special guest sometimes.
Look, we got no
How
final.
is your injury, by the way, mate? Just if anyone's wondering.
I'll quickly fill in some blanks on that because it is a kind of injury that you would expect Matty C to get to. I'm riding a bike and I get swooped by a magpie because on our island, that's a thing. Magpies will come after you if you get a bit close to a tree
So
where they've got a
Australian.
nest. So Aussie.
So Australian.
I don't ride bikes very often. I've only bought the bike pretty recently, and I just panicked. That's the end of it. I just panicked and hit the brakes a bit hard and went over the top of the handlebars and met the pavement pretty close up, and immediately knew something was really amiss. So I managed to drag my sorry bag of bones home and ring my wife and say, "Can you help get me to any hospital? Just any. I don't even care." And that's kind of where things began, and end up going under the knife on Thursday last week to get things back into place. I've done a pretty good job apparently. So, yeah, a lot
You
of
were
this week
commentating a couple days later.
Yeah.
It didn't even matter.
Well,
Straight off the IR.
I played a pretty small role in the commentary. I was definitely in a backup role behind Manjot and Michael there. And Manjot, again, he's really, if anyone hasn't caught the ACT Gridiron, the MN live streaming ACT Gridiron games of the week in the commentary, firstly, the quality of the video of that is top notch. No state level league is doing a better job of that on the island here than the ACT League, and that's a huge credit to Miles and the whole team. And Manjot has just, I don't know what it is about you, Manjot, but from the time I met you about a year ago to now, the evolution of your confidence and professionalism is extraordinary. And there's no doubt that you were the best person to take up the role for the play-by-play on that, and you do an excellent job.
Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, it's been a weird year, I guess, and a half, nearly 2 years of pastry press and all this shit. So it's been weird. Let me just say, all this attention, but yeah,
you're building an empire, brother. I think that's the way to look at it. You're building an empire. Melly Incorporated is just the stocks.
Yeah, all the pastry press.
I don't think there's anything normal about what any of us do.
Yeah, nothing normal about being an NFL fan in Australia.
No.
It's becoming
and you
more
only
normal,
have to say that to the 3 a.m. alarm to make sure that you've got inactives out.
Oh.
That's where it all starts.
I just sent a screenshot to someone the other day just to prove that I do that. I was like at 3:40 a.m., which used to be at 2:40 a.m. Before we got the daylight saving. Like, I do it even if I don't have questionable players. Like, I just do it just in case there's just like some random laid out. Yeah, and then my wife pretty much always wakes up and like going, "What the fuck are you doing?" like kick up at 2:40.
She will never understand.
Think I'm going for some secret run or something.
Yeah, can we Can I make this show a little bit political? But look, can the Americans not pass the Sunshine Protection Act, please? Because I'd love a 5 a.m. get up still. I don't want them to have permanent daylight saving. Please don't pass that bill, please, because we need those 5 a.m. get ups. I'm willing to make the show political just for a couple of seconds because I want to get my point across. Let us get a little bit more sleep before our games. We want that whole 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. thing. Everyone can agree with that.
Taylor, you going to weigh in on this, Taylor?
Yeah.
Nah, Major said enough, mate.
Switzerland over there. I'm gonna hop on the bandwagon too and go, mate. Yeah, I saw Americans who've got the hide to complain about waivers processing at some dumb time. I'm like, are you kidding? We have to get up every week for inactives at dumb o'clock. One day of the week, some small process happens overnight that doesn't change your life at all, and it actually happens in a.
Sorry, I will chime back in.
I'll
chime back in because I lost my mind when a couple of weeks ago when the first London game happened, and then like every podcast was talking about how someone effed up and didn't start someone and
Kamara. It was the Kamara thing.
Yeah, this guy left in Kamara, and then he tried to like email the commissioner to like let him have a player and stuff. I'm like, how do you like these guys are getting up at like 7 a.m. or something?
Oh my god!
To look at their lineup,
like a 9 a.m. kickoff.
Exactly. I'm like, what is going on? Like, at worst, just don't start a questionable player. Just start someone else if you don't think you're going to be up at 7 a.m.
Yeah. What you guys got to complain about? We got to get up so much earlier. Honestly, I might have to actually start getting up early to set inactives because I only get up, 7 minutes before games start. So that's not enough time to check through
That's a lot of
Yeah.
leagues,
But that's
man. You're
winning.
playing with fire.
I think 10 leagues in 7 minutes. Can I make it? Probably not.
You got to do them in order of like, so what's my record, right? And the league where you're like, yeah, fuck it, I'm tanking anyway. You just leave that till last.
Yeah, Astro League. That's definitely for sure.
Well, thanks for letting me know we were tanking. When you
Sorry.
drafted and you said we won the draft, I believed you, mate.
Yeah, sorry. That's on me. That's on me. Yeah.
I did have a moment. This might have been just because I've been on a lot of painkillers this week, but I thought it would have been really funny to cut out an Adam Schefter tweet and then tweet from one of my other accounts to make sure I could get the text font right and paste it over the top to say that the Carabao Kings or Western Wankers had fired Manjot Melly, the president of football operations, after a 1 and 5. I thought I was so funny when I posted that. And the reaction in the Astro League was really lukewarm. I thought that was so funny. I was giggling to I had tears running down my face. I thought that was so funny.
I found it
I bet
funny
some
too,
people
but
thought you were
not.
serious. They were like, how do we act?
Do you reckon that was it? I was laughing like a school kid. I just thought this is so funny.
I was laughing because I knew you were taking the piss. I'm just wondering if some people thought it was serious.
Maybe. God, could you imagine? I've actually made people think I'm some tyrant. I don't know.
Yeah.
We've all been in the league a long time. Surely people have got the context. Anyway, hey, we've got a really good show on because we've got all the usual segments that everyone's come to love. Of course, this week is going to be a tricky one for pastries, and I'm glad it's not for me because Manjot was going through it saying, right, you know, like the three biggest rushes from the weekend, 2 of them were like quarterbacks, and there was almost no one had 2 receiving touchdowns at all, and it was just such a difficult week for things that you might assume to be normal. The scoring in our fantasy league was at such a depression. It was almost at a 3-year low for average weekly score this week. So that's going to be super interesting to check out. Taylor, aside from the seagull sex throwing him right off last week, Dr. Good Call. I'm really looking forward to going through that because I mean, every week it's a good segment to begin with, but I understand it was an interesting week for the doctor. So can't wait for that, to say the least. Mate, we've gone back and forth a little bit about who's going in front of the court, and it's been an 11th hour decision about who we're putting up in front of the public defender this week. I cannot wait for that. And then, of course, starts of the week, I'm back to reclaim my last place. So, you know, it's going to be a good night.
And Manjot hasn't
buckle in.
Must be telling us the order like on the spot. That's the interesting thing.
Oh yeah. I completely forgot to actually do the order of freaking starts of the week because I thought Taylor won. So
So used to it.
but I'm gonna do it on the spot. Who cares?
Unprecedented.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw you guys off because I couldn't care less.
Okay.
Look,
That's so
I couldn't
funny.
care less.
Because Taylor's such a strategist with these, like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to tell anyone. But you know what? No, actually, what I'm going to do 2 hours before, I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell him then, and I'm going to do it in a way to make sure that I just don't want to give this person the turn because of who's available this week. And they scored really shit last week. And there's so much goes into it with you, Taylor.
Mate, you have no idea how many times I've thought about tanking Dr. Good Call just so I don't give my picks away for starts of the week.
That's hilarious. Don't you just go a bit deeper, though? Like, you remember the Logan Thomas one, which, by the way, best keep away you ever had. That guy fucking stunk. But don't you ever think, oh, well, you know, I could go for, you know, decent wide receiver on the fringe, or I could go for Romeo Dubs. Just go right to the bottom of the bag.
I don't know, but it's funny you say that about Logan Thomas. I'm pretty sure every time I've had like a pick sniped and I've made a big deal on the podcast, I'm pretty sure every time they've been absolute trash.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure every time they've scored like 3 points.
The Logan Thomas one is seared into here because we've got a relationship with Logan Thomas that goes back, mate. I mean, I was listening to an episode about us calling him the dickhole a little while back.
Yeah.
Our relationship goes very deep with Logan Thomas. So that one's seared in there. And it was just like this game of keepings off where he had to be a second-round pick to try and make sure the other person didn't get him. And then I don't know, what did he lob up, a 1.8 or something? It was embarrassingly bad.
That's the loose end position.
Well, now, before we kick off, I wanted to ask you guys each something because we're almost halfway through the fantasy season of the regular season already, and it's a little upsetting because, I mean, for us, Manjot and I, we're not in a great position, and we're kind of scrambling a bit. But we're at a point in the season where it's a really great time to take some stock and kind of reevaluate what you're up to. Because I think early on it's fuck, you just got to win, right? But as the season goes on, the strategy's got to change a little bit depending on where you're up to. So Tay, I want to ask you first because last year you got off to a roaring start, and this year you're probably in the camp where the urgency isn't as terrifying as it is for teams with the worst record. If you're starting at the top end, maybe you're undefeated or you might be 4 or 5 wins. How does your season change gears now compared to that early part of the season where it's just all about you just got to win every damn week to create that separation?
This is where you can start taking shots on guys that might be on an IR. They might be just a bit of a slump at the moment, but you can see a roadmap for them in maybe 3 or 4 weeks. This is where you don't have to worry so much about your wins and losses the next 2 or 3 weeks. You want to set yourself up for the run home. So I've often talked about handcuffing as well. So I think this is starting to get to the point where if you've got a couple of high-end running backs in your team, I assume it's set up pretty well if it's won 5 or 6 games. This is where I probably would try and get those handcuffs. Obviously, not everyone is handcuffable. Like, there are some that are pretty clear backups, whereas,
do you want to give us an example of each, like a good situation and one where we go, that's not handcuffs? Do you mind giving us an example?
Yeah, so I would say, I would actually say Leonard Fournette with Rashad White. Is actually a pretty good one. Obviously, you've got Delvin Cook with Madison. That's a pretty obvious one. I wouldn't say Jones and Dillon because I feel like they're both like sort of too high. Like I feel like the Dillon's one's a bit too high end, so like it's hard to actually handcuff him. I know Dillon hasn't had a great season, so you might be able to get that done to try and get him for a bit cheaper, but I don't know if you're going to get him for what you want because this is more about trying to get guys off like a waiver wire more so than a full-on trade to try and get the handcuff. Yep. So I'm looking at doing stuff like that because I really want to try and lock up that running back position. But I've also brought this up last year, and I don't really have someone off the top of my head right now, but even if, let's say, like Keenan Allen was out for another 2 weeks, but you knew he was coming back, and the person that has him is just sitting there at 3-3 or 2-4, I'm making a trade for him because you're going to get him for cheap because he's doing nothing right now. I'm offering like someone that's playing quite well, probably a little bit over what their expectation was for a guy like Keenan Allen because I can afford to wait him out for a couple more weeks. So obviously if DeAndre Hopkins suspension was now and not him coming back now and he was back in like 3 weeks, he's the kind of guy I'd be going for as well if I was in that position. Someone that I think is going to have far better value at the end of the year than they do right now because you'll get them cheaper than you probably should.
Manjot actually might have a good example of this because in our league, we squirreled away a guy. Did you want to talk a bit about that, Manjot?
Yeah, I got Eli Apple off you. You got Brandon Cooks. So I thought that was a pretty even trade. I didn't even use Cooks that much. So, yeah.
Eli Mitchell's been down since week 1. He won't be back for a little while. I've already absorbed half of his downtime with him sitting on my bench. So for Manjot, he doesn't have to wait it all out.
Yep.
And he's guaranteed a guy who's going to see a lot of work when he gets back. In Astro League 2, we have squirreled away Odell Beckham Jr. It would be helpful if we were 5-1. We're 1-5. So now all of a sudden, a guy who's 5-1, like in the position Taylor's saying here, is a guy that we got to try and find and go, well, we need someone who can play now. How about we trade you this guy and you give someone we can play now? I mean, clearly we're not going to get someone who's the same sort of value as Odell Beckham Jr., healthy and with a body of work beneath him. But if we can get us someone who's a little better than someone we're already starting, that might be the difference between us winning and losing next week. Desperation changes things, right?
Yeah, we picked up Odell pretty quickly, actually, in our league because I was like to Maddie, all right, I'd rather take a chance at Odell, wait it out, and just let him take a bench spot, and then I'm gonna drop Pacheco because Pacheco's not gonna do shit. So I think that's the sort of thing you'd want to do. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do, 100%. Yeah.
So you were gonna say?
I was just gonna say because I was probably talking more on the high end then about like ideas I'd have if I was going well. If I'm the opposite, if I'm really struggling, you really start I know we always talk about fantasy being a full season. Like we don't talk about it being week by week. I think that's a little bit different if you're in that situation. If you're
Yeah.
2-4, 1-5, I think you actually need to start playing week by week because you actually have to win like every single week. Like you
Yeah.
have no choice. There's no point playing for the full season if you have no roadmap of making it to the playoffs anyway. You're pretty much you're done anyway if you lose your next couple of games. So you actually really need to start thinking about the now. And even if that's trading for a guy who you think's got a way better matchup this week, and you're having to give a tiny bit of extra capital to get him, if that guy can win you this week, and then you can basically move on to next week knowing you're still alive, I think that's a huge thing. Well, I've done it in a couple of leagues where I was 2-3 last week, where I thought, you know what, I really can't afford to fall to 2-4. And I've given up probably a tiny bit of extra capital just to get the guy that I thought had a great matchup, just to try and get that win because I don't want to fall to 2-4. I'd rather get to 3-3 and then I can work it out later.
100%. I think that's the situation Manjot and I are in Astro League now, where we're 1-5, and we probably were hopeful that waivers were going to save us. I mean, that was a question that I was going to ask you, Manjot, is that's kind of how we survived these first few weeks, right? Do you want to share a little bit about our experience with trying to navigate waivers and where we're at now and what our roadmap might look like to try and turn ourselves around? Because it's different when there's desperation, right?
Look, in a 16-team league and my first year in it, oh fuck, it's hard to do waivers. I'm gonna be the first one to say it's a long way back when you have to do a ton of waivers. It's difficult. Just oh boy, we haven't had the best sort of time, and we've just because we've just picked up the wrong dudes. It feels like, and the guys we wanted always get picked up by someone else. Like I remember we wanted Derek Carr, and then Taylor got his hands on him, so he got Goff instead. That one actually worked out.
That worked
for us.
out good.
Came out okay.
That one came out well.
It didn't feel good at the time. It felt horrible at the time.
Yeah, the one of the ones I didn't like was when we dropped the Jags defense when they got that week. They got the pick six on the Eagles. Yeah, because of matchup. But yep. That was another one that was difficult. And yeah, all these waivers, we haven't really picked up many dudes. And actually today, hopefully we got one right because we just picked up Chase Claypool and dropped Elijah Moore, Taylor's boy, who gets 0 targets. Just wanna put that out there, Taylor. You have free reign to get him now. We tried our best, to make it work with Elijah. He was our 4th round pick. And he's absolutely disappointed. So yeah, waivers have been important for us. We just needed to nail the draft, and eventually our draft picks just fell off the earth. So waivers has been the way because we haven't got any trades going. And yeah, as you see, 1-5 right now hasn't worked out fully.
And it's such a different world in that position now because okay, we've had a position now. We've had a couple of decent waiver weeks where we've had pretty high priority, and we've tried to use that to turn it into something, and it kind of hasn't come off. And now we're probably in that position where we are willingly the team someone like Taylor was talking about before is trying to find. And I think that's a humbling experience to say, I'm going to have to liquidate something good and turn it into two things that the sum of their parts might be a little better than the good player, or maybe they won't be, but I've just got to find a way to score points. Like the desperation really does make you do things that you'd probably otherwise not do. It's a league, I think our league especially is one where there's a lot of pride. Like we don't play for money. A lot of leagues, there's cash prizes and there's punishments and there's a lot. Ours is 100%. The currency is ego, and none of the guys are really willing to wear a bad result. Like there's a lot of shit talk and there's a lot of having to defend yourself when things don't go well. And it's all in good spirit, but it's also kind of a bit pointy as well because everyone thinks that they're quite a good fantasy player if they've survived 10 plus years in a 16 team. We're going to kick each other's ass sort of league. And it is a good league. We haven't had any ownership change in over 3 years. And the majority of the team have been with us since the first year. So it's hard to get that in a league that big. in a country on the other side of the world. I think it's really shows how unique the league we play in is. But hopefully that's a nice little sort of look behind the curtain about where you are in your league and what you might need to do in terms of shifting gear, because we never got out of, we've just got to play week by week. Once you get to a position like Taylor was saying with the 4 and 2s, the 5 and 1s, you can take the foot off a little bit to plan further ahead. But if you don't ever get the wins up early enough, you never leave that. And Manjot, I think you and I are true. We've never actually felt like, well, we could afford to. We've never said we could afford to lose a game.
Yeah, can't lose. I mean, one of the things I think we kind of messed up on was not tanking that first week. We should have taken Javonte out of the lineup. I think we're just discussing that to get that first waiver priority. I think that's one of the mistakes we made. But yeah, some leagues, I mean, it can be frowned upon. In the Astro League, people do it openly, don't they, Matty?
The strategy is so high, you can pull off almost any move, and people will respect your strategy.
Yeah.
It's like we're up to season 43 of Survivor. I know Manjot's a Survivor fan. I know that Taylor is, but we're watching that now as well. And people are ruthless in that, but they turn around and go, well, hey, I've got to survive. And everyone goes, yeah, okay, I've got to survive. And there's this weird, like, I don't know, like prisoners arrangement thing of being like, well, we get it. If we're in the position you're in, we'd probably have to do it. And people don't look down their nose so much about people making moves that other people would have like ethical trouble with, because such is the level of the gameplay where we're at.
Yeah, look, I'm actually going to bring up this other trade I saw in the league today. I just actually saw that the two owners accepted a Lazard for Mark Andrews trade today. I just thought that would be funny to bring out. Yeah, the two owners actually did this trade with Lazard and Mark Andrews. The guy who got Mark Andrews actually is our boy Ian. So this is in our league. He actually got Mark Andrews, but then the commissioner stepped in and vetoed that because the rest of us were just like, wait, how the fuck did that happen? How can you get Mark
He vetoed
Andrews?
it?
Yeah, the
Why?
commission actually vetoed that because I think the guy accidentally clicked accept.
Okay.
So that was just a funny fantasy moment.
That's
I just
fair.
wanted to share.
I was going to say, if the guy willingly wanted to pick up Lazard, there's no rules about people not being able to run their team poorly. We're a good example of people running their team poorly. So there's no rules against that. But yeah, I think if it's this is a rule I've got every year, and I told Manjot about this when we first started this year as a joint ownership operation in the Astro League. Always send Kenny a trade right after the draft in case he does hit accept, no matter what it is, because he's done it twice. He's done it twice where he's gone, I didn't mean to accept that.
Yeah. Look, someone offered me in that same league, they offered me Josh Jacobs for Jamar Chase, and Jacobs was on a bye last week, and Chase got 32.2 points. So look, I've got to be honest. I did the right thing.
Yeah.
I actually picked up Brian Robertson on waivers, so I don't even need a running back anymore because my boy's on the team. Let's go.
On the team.
Just quickly with what you said there, Matty, too. If anyone's listening and you have in your league a veto period on trades, get that shit out of my life. That is the dumbest thing in fantasy football. Like I finally got it out of Sizzle and Quinny's league.
Yep.
And the worst part about it in Sizzle and Quinny's league especially was that the owner was like living in London. So the commissioner was living in London or something.
Oh,
so
stop.
you do a trade like a couple of days before the games are going to happen, and then you couldn't get a hold of him to actually push the trade through.
Yeah.
So like all these trades were just not getting done. And then what's actually kind of funny is that I think some of the guys got so used to that. So there's been a few times this year now that we actually play properly and just do the trades and they go straight through. A couple of times there's been trades go through at like midnight on the night before games, and then people haven't set their lineup. So again, that's another reason why, especially if I've sent a trade overnight, I normally will delete my trade offers before I go to bed. But if I do,
on game day,
I'll wake up before games anyway. But again, just if you have a veto system, it is dumb. Like we all have our own teams. If we make stupid mistakes and do stupid trades, it's on us. Like we're all grown adults. We shouldn't be like given the opportunity to take back something because we made a boo-boo. What? Yeah. Just put the trades through straight away.
And because we're not playing for sheep stations, like honestly, there's no money involved. No one gets a private island at the end. You don't get to rule over a kingdom. For us, it is really just the right to give each other a whole bunch of shit, which is great. But, at the end, it's fake football. We actually don't own anything.
The thing is, right, if it's that bad a trade where everyone's going nuts about it in the group chat, like, sure, I'm certain you could have like some sort of system where you sort of vote on the side and go, look, should we be able to veto it after the fact and give the players back? Like,
oh yeah, like if it's Mahomes for a kicker, you go, well, that's
yeah. If it's like obvious collusion to like get someone ahead at the end of the season, and one team who's given up is just giving all their players away, then that you can then after the fact do that. Like as a commissioner, you have sort of that power. But just don't have a veto system during the year. Like 99% of trades are going to be fine. They're going to have some ones where you feel like it's a bit iffy, but in the end, like we're all grown.
It's not your job to like it. That's the other thing I think about when a third party gets a say on a trade between two parties, which is an agreement between them. Team X doesn't get to decide whether Team A and B get to trade.
Yeah.
They're grown-ups and they've decided on something, and you're absolutely allowed to run your team poorly. You absolutely are. Other people don't have to like it. You're allowed to run your team excellently. Other people don't even like that because it makes it harder for them to win if other teams are playing excellently. At the bottom of it all, look, the idea that you should have a say in every trade is the craziest amount of entitlement and just it's misplaced ego, where the trades really are just agreements between two teams about how they think, whether true or not, whether they think they're improving their team or not. And if it's obvious that one person overvalues somebody and you wouldn't have done that trade, fine. But we can see there isn't somebody who's getting like a cheater's advantage out of it. It's just, that's really dumb luck that this person overvalued Lazard and traded it for Mark Andrews. Man, I wish I could have had that trade. Well, you don't get to choose. You don't get to undo someone else's trade because they got it and you didn't.
I know we're going to move on soon. I'll just give you one example, and it's literally from Sizzle and Quinny's league.
Oh, yeah, this would be a good one to wrap it.
Because there was a veto system. And again, this is my issue I have with people vetoing trades, is because a lot of the times it's just because they're jealous, of what someone's getting. And so basically, this is the best story ever because it ends in the person who everyone thought was getting raped actually won the league. So what happened was I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was giving up basically a haul for Saquon Barkley. Sorry, one.
Yeah.
So I offered Kelsey, I think it was David Johnson in his first year at Houston. So he was actually seen as a top 20 pick. And someone else off the top of my, I cannot remember, all for Saquon Barkley. Like Kelsey himself, could be seen as not that far off Saquon. It was a couple of years ago though, so he probably was more like a second round pick. But then a running back and I think a receiver, all for Saquon. And so I put it through. It got accepted, and then it got vetoed by like 4 people. And I found like a couple of people actually said, "Oh, I was the one that vetoed." And I asked why, and they said, because we don't want you to have CMC and Saquon on the same team.
Yeah,
it's the first and second pick.
It's not
and I'm
choice.
like, that is ridiculous. Anyway, they ended up, we did it again. We both of us wanted to do it, and we both said that. And so we put it through again and accepted, and everyone just said, and let it through. Anyway, move forward. Saquon tears his ACL in the second game. I've given up all these assets for nothing, essentially, and that guy goes on and wins the league. Yeah. So they were trying to veto a trade that actually would have cost the guy the league title if they didn't let it go through. So everyone thinks they know what the better side of the trade is, but in the end, no one knows.
No. And we're only talking about this earlier today, and it was a spirited conversation too, because we were talking about values. And I was trying to establish, what do you value in this trade? Because it was an interesting trade that you had on offer in a redraft, and it was one of those things where if it's iffy and you don't actually know which side's the better side, that's probably a good trade, and every trade I've ever got in front of me where I go, gee, I feel nervous about whether I'm going to make the right decision or not, that's probably a fair trade then, because you're contemplating what it'd be like to live on the other side and the danger of having what you don't know versus the safety of having what you know, but also the value of having what you know and not being able to dream about how great that could be, the way you can dream about something you don't own. So I think those, and that's why I said to you, mate, there's no wrong answer, but give me an idea of what you're thinking. Trades are such a funny situation because it is honestly a sales transaction where there isn't a price tag. the people who are in the conversation set the price tag, and that, as you say, Tay, it gets people all up a bit of flutter, doesn't it? Gets their knickers in a knot sometimes.
Sure does.
Yeah. Look, it's a non-fungible token. It's an NFT, pretty much. You don't have a set value for every single player. That's what a non-fungible token actually means. So essentially, every player is an NFT in fantasy.
Writing this down. Sorry, can you say that again?
put that-
Non-fungible.
Yeah.
Fungible. Okay, got it.
Yeah, token. Yeah. Look, I've got to go since it's some cryptocurrency. We got to get our own NFTs at this point. I'm getting us the NFT sort of deal right now. I've just got the contract signed. You guys didn't know. On the side, they have to mention NFTs every episode for us to get $1 billion. That's just what I've heard.
Where do I have to convert my...
Crypto market might have just crashed. So look, I think our entire deal is as useless as Trevor Lawrence's entire rookie contract.
Ooh, ouch. But
Yeah.
I was,
You got paid in crypto, right, Maddie?
Yeah.
Sure you did.
Yeah. He and there was that one there, Odell wanted a whole bunch of his money paid in crypto, and he ate a big old dirt sandwich on that one.
Now it's all worthless now.
Yeah. No, I was gonna mention about these NFTs. Is there still the opportunity to invest in pastries? Because, mate, I've got a couple of lazy dollars I could turn into pastry bucks.
Pastries, yeah. Look, every type of pastry is an NFT, but they're all the same. The ones my mom bakes anyway. So
I like to invest in those 3P ones, mate.
Yeah, I guess there's a set amount that's been regulated. So it's
Is this
not
a
really.
Is this a segue into pastries?
Yeah.
Hey, let's get into the pastries. Let's see if I can bring up the pastries drop, because I know you guys missed these drops last week.
My next player caught AIDS in overtime, apparently. He decided he had dick fingers.
How
ETN.
nervous are you?
Yeah, I've been nervous. We've benched him already in a 16-team league. So
And what's he even doing? Has he got the
don't know.
got a Auslan lady on the sideline sending it in?
He had barely anything in week one, even though he jagged a touchdown in garbage time.
Should we move on to a sunnier subject, please?
yeah.
I'm feeling sad.
Against the Titans, because it's the Titans, and my God, I'm giving them back the Guinness World Record for our secondary. Like, they are just dog shit.
Dr. Goodcall definitely diagnosing correctly.
They were 24th against quarterback in 2021. I think they're going to be 50th this year. They are so bad.
Maddie, what's going on over there?
Feeling very happy about this.